All right, let's just jump right in. Imagine an ancient prophecy. We're talking 2,500 years old that paints this picture of a terrifyingly powerful king. This guy is a master of deception, he crushes entire nations, and he even declares war on God himself. But here's the kicker. His end doesn't come on some grand battlefield. No, it's something way, way stranger. The prophecy says he'll be broken without hand. What does that even mean? It's not an army that takes him down. It's not an assassin. It's something else, something supernatural. And that one little phrase sets up this incredible historical mystery that, get this, had to wait centuries before anyone could solve it. So yeah, that's the big question we're tackling today. Who was this king? How on earth did his story play out exactly the way it was predicted hundreds of years in advance? And maybe the most important question, why does this profile of an ancient tyrant still feel so, chillingly familiar? All right, let's get into it.
Okay, first things first. To even begin to solve this thing, we've got to decode the bizarre symbols that Daniel saw. The prophecy is written in this kind of code. But what's so cool is that the text itself actually gives us the key to crack it.
So check this out. The text lays it all out for us. You've got this ram with two horns, right? That's the combined Medo-Persian Empire. Then this he-goat comes storming in from the west. That's the Greek Empire. And that big, notable horn it has, well, that's none other than its very first and most famous king, Alexander the Great. It's spelled out right there. Let's put this on a timeline to see how it all unfolds. So Daniel gets this vision way back around 551 BC. Fast forward about 200 years, and bam, Alexander the Great does exactly what the prophecy said he would. He conquers Persia. But then he just dies, suddenly, and his massive empire just shatters into pieces. And it's out of that chaos, from those broken pieces, that our mystery king, this figure called the Little Horn, starts to rise up. Okay, so if the ram is Persia and the goat is Greece, then who in the world is this Little Horn? Well, it turns out both the prophecy and the history books point to one very specific person. And that person is Antiochus IV Epiphanes. See, in this kind of ancient symbolism, horns are all about power and rulers. He's called a little horn because, honestly, he started out pretty small time, rising up from a weaker part of Alexander's old fractured empire. Now, his buddies and flatterers called him Epiphanes, which means the illustrious one. But everybody else, his enemies, they had a nickname that stuck a lot better, Epimanes, which means the madman. That tells you a lot right there. And this right here is where we really get to the heart of it all. We're going to zoom in on verses 24 and 25 of Daniel chapter 8, because what they give us is this just stunningly accurate profile of this guy. I mean, it's like reading a 2,500-year-old criminal profile that lays out the entire anatomy of his tyranny step by step. So the first thing the prophecy points out is this weird paradox. It says he would be mighty, incredibly powerful, but not by his own power. Kind of strange, right? So what was the real secret to his strength? Where was all this power actually coming from? Well, it really boils down to three things. First, he got a major boost from the outside through political alliances with other kings. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, he was helped from the inside by corrupt groups within Judea who literally betrayed their own people to help him. And third, the text points to something bigger, a theological angle, that he was basically an instrument of divine judgment, allowed to gain power because, as the prophecy puts it, the transgressors in the land had come to the full. The next part of his profile is just chilling. The vision says his campaign of destruction would be astonishingly successful. The phrases destroy wonderfully. How creepy is that? It suggests a level of devastation that's almost hard to wrap your head around, all carried out with just ruthless efficiency. And history, unfortunately, proves this with brutal crystal clarity. When Antiochus sacked Jerusalem, 40,000 people were killed. And that's not all. Another 40,000 were sold into slavery. That's the horrifying real-world consequence behind those prophetic words. But here's the thing. It wasn't just about brute force. Not at all. The prophecy makes a point to highlight his policy and his craft. And that tells us that the real foundation of his power wasn't his army. It was his deception, his political manipulation. And honestly, this is such a key point to understand. Antiochus's real superpower wasn't his army. It was his cunning.
Historians literally describe him as being skilled in every kind of deceit, a guy who used fraud and flattery as his main tools. And that kind of tyranny is so dangerous because it doesn't just conquer a nation, it rots it from the inside out. It turns neighbor against neighbor.
And that leads us to maybe one of the most sinister lines in the entire prophecy. He would use peace to destroy many. Just think about that. He literally weaponized the idea of peace to crush people who weren't expecting it. I mean, it's the classic tyrant's playbook, isn't it? Offer security with one hand while you're planning subjugation with the other. He perfected this twisted art of destroying people while pretending to be their friend, of invading nations that had let their guard down because he'd promised them peace. And then we get to the final piece of the profile, his ultimate target. This wasn't just about conquering people or nations anymore. No, his rebellion was a direct, unbelievably arrogant assault on God himself, who the text calls the Prince of Princes. And his actions were totally explicit. He abolished the daily sacrifices at the temple in Jerusalem, he ordered copies of the Jewish law to be burned, and then, in the ultimate act of desecration, he marched into the sanctuary and set up a statue of Jupiter Olympus right on the altar. You see, he didn't just want to conquer a people, he wanted to completely erase their god.
So after all that terror, all that blasphemy, how did it finally end for him? This brings us right back to that mystery we started with, to see how history delivered the final verdict. And here it is. This is where that central mystery is finally solved. The prophecy said he would be broken without hand. And sure enough, historians, both Jewish sources and secular ones like Polybius, record that he wasn't killed in battle. Nope. Instead, he was struck down by some horrific disease. They say he died in a state of total madness and just agonizing torment. A supernatural end, exactly like the vision predicted.
But you know what? The story doesn't end in darkness. In December of 1640 BC, a Jewish hero named Judas Maccabeus led this incredible revolt that succeeded in cleansing and rededicating the temple. And to remember this amazing deliverance, a new festival was started, the Feast of Dedication, which you probably know by its more common name today, Hanukkah. It's so easy to talk about this as just history, but we can't forget the human toll, even for the person who just saw the vision. The text says that after all this, Daniel himself fainted and was sick for days. He was just completely overwhelmed by the weight of the evil he had seen. It's a powerful reminder that there's real suffering behind these words. And get this, the angel actually told Daniel to seal up the vision because its fulfillment was for many days in the future. It was literally like a message in a bottle sent across time. It wasn't really for Daniel's generation. It was for the people living almost 400 years later, the ones who would actually see these terrifying events unfold and could look back and realize, someone saw this coming. And that kind of brings us to a final thought, doesn't it? This profile of a tyrant, a leader who gets powerful by using alliances and stirring up division, who makes deceit his official policy, and who weaponizes the promise of peace. That's a pattern that just keeps echoing through history again and again. The vision was for a very specific time, yeah, but its warnings feel absolutely timeless. So it makes you wonder, how do we see these exact same tactics playing out in the world today?